Hello there and welcome back to another edition of the Hot Lap Classic Remastered. This time we're taking a look at the 1998 Mercedes-Benz CLK 320 Sport. Of course, this car has an almost identical twin in the form of the CLK 200 Sport, but while that has a puny little 4-cylinder, this has a nice big 6-cylinder up front, so this one should be a little bit quicker than that, although that car was actually pretty impressive when it came here, so interesting to see how the CLK 320 gets along compared to both the 200 Sport and some of the BMW brethren that we have had go around the course. In terms of the CLK itself, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm not a fan of this generation of Mercedes-Benz styling. I think it's aged a little bit better than it looked back in the day, but I've never liked this era of Mercedes with the 4 sort of circular lights on the front, the ostentatious grille. I appreciate that they couldn't always go looking like they did in sort of the 90s and to a lesser extent the 80s, where they sort of had that smooth raked styling, whereas this is a little bit more individual, I'd say, but I don't think it really works. I think Lexus actually did a better job when they copied this for the GS series of saloon cars, but yeah, nevertheless, should still be pretty quick, I would imagine. CLKs aren't too bad. Of course, there's also the CLK race car, which we have seen go around the course, which isn't in the base game, but thanks to GT2 Plus that got added, and it was pretty quick, so I don't think we're going to get to that level of performance, but we'll see. Front-engined rear-wheel drive, 469 horsepower, 1,330 kilos. It is a heavy old barge, this, but what would you expect? It is a Mercedes. Anyways, to find out how the CLK 320 gets along, this car is going to get 6 laps of the Motorsports Land track in order to set the best time it possibly can. Our current leader is the Suzuki Cultus Pikes Peak Edition. That car set a time of 26.540. The CLK 320 unlikely to beat that. Now the CLK 200 Sport, the 4-cylinder version, set a time of a 31.038, which was actually pretty good, especially the time it ran, because it ran very early on, I think, and this is just beating that on its first lap. Cool. Alright, well, that car's in the bin. I don't really know what's next up on this. Technically, I think the 3 Series Coupes aren't, or are they? I'm not sure. The CLK, as far as I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm almost certain the CLKs were more like E-Class based than they were C-Class based, but I could be wrong there. It might just because the E-Class ended up looking like the CLK. But, yeah, I don't know, maybe the BMWs have got something to worry about here. Although it is still, it definitely drives how you'd imagine a Mercedes to drive around here. It is big and blocky and torquey. That is essentially the method to this car's madness. It is always a bit weird to me. I mean, maybe it's because it wasn't quite out at the time. It is always amazing to me that this game didn't really feature any of the V8 CLKs that came along. Like, obviously, I think the AMGs were a little bit after this game's time, that sort of the CLK 55 AMG and stuff like that, although that is in a couple of mods if you want to try that one out. But the 430, I think, was like a base car that launched. Unless this is like based on Japanese models, I'm not too sure. But yeah, it was a bit surprising we didn't have the 4.3 V8 to play around with, which I think, I could be wrong here, but I'm almost certain that's a very similar V8 to what was in the C43 AMG. Unless that was a straight 6, I don't know. No, the 36 was the straight 6. But yeah, always a bit surprising that they never did like a big V8 CLK in this game. This is a car that's sort of very strange to drive. Don't get me wrong, I haven't been driving particularly well, I will admit, but it does feel like it sort of peaked on that first lap, and then ever since then it's sort of been a little bit trickier to drive. It definitely feels its weight, I'll tell you that. And like I say, it is all about the torque in this car. It is a very sort of torquey machine. Because there's far more power than something like a 3 Series does, but again it weighs a lot more than something like a 3 Series does. To the line, 30.731. Yeah, weird is how I'd describe that, to be perfectly honest. Very strange car to drive. No, I can't really make out whether that's good to drive or not. It's very Mercedes-like to drive. In a way that not a lot of Mercedes have been. The AMG saloons have been seriously quick around here. The CLK 230 was quick around here. I think the A-Class wasn't half bad considering it's sort of top-heavy and it's an A-Class. Well, there's this. I don't know. It's a little bit... I don't know. The power figures on this and the fact that the other Mercedes-Benz have been quite nice to drive would indicate that that's sort of could have gone quicker, but... I mean, looking at the splits, it isn't really that much in it. Yeah. Weird car, that. Weird car. I don't... I'm not sure. It does go right around where a bunch of other weird cars go as well. But, yeah. Interesting. A 30.731 will place this into 267th place. Goes in between the TRD 3000 GT and the Nissan Silvia Q's Aero. It is quicker than a Mazda Unos Roadster, quicker than a Lancia Y, quicker than the Toyota MRS Spider, quicker than the Mugen S2000. Mustang GT's here. Mustang's pretty interesting because it is a little bit sort of Mustang-y to drive, really. In terms of sort of BMWs, it is slower than the 323i Coupe, the E36, by about 0.1, which I probably makes sense. Slower than the IS200 by about 0.2. About 0.2 off of the E55 AMG, which I think makes sense as well. But it's quicker than like naturally aspirated Supras and other stuff that sort of compete with this as well. I think for sort of this... I mean, it's quicker than a 320ci, quicker than a 328i Saloon, quicker than the Nissan 200SX. Yeah, bit bizarre, really, that. I'm not sure on that one, to be perfectly honest. Very weird car to drive. I honestly don't... I feel like there is a bit more time to come out of that. I almost want to say it would be like a 30.6 car, but I'm not really that sure. I don't think it would be. I don't think it gets much better than that in terms of the way it drives. Very strange. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Thank you all very much for watching. Join me next time when hopefully I'll be driving something that's a little less brain-turning. Until then, farewell.